and we'll get started. So we're back in our trusty sandbox survey that we've been looking at all week. And today we're going to talk about data and analysis, results and reports, how we can look at the data. Again, going back to our listen, understand, act framework. Our listen is collecting the data. Surveys are just one of many ways that we can listen to our constituents in Qualtrics. We have other ways as well. And then we talked about workflows, which is all the ways that we can act on the data. Immediately after a survey is submitted, we can create a ticket, we can integrate with other systems via an API, or with some of the direct integrations that Qualtrics has out of the box. So today we'll talk about looking at your raw data, visualizing your data, and understanding it. So we're going to start in the data and analysis tab. But before I go there, something that's kind of helpful if you are building out reports and results, and you need to kind of make sure that things are looking the way they should before you launch your survey. You can click on this drop down right here, Tools, and this is a really helpful feature, Generate Test Responses. I'm going to go ahead and generate 50 test responses right now. So Qualtrics is just going to go through and randomly take your survey. Usually in our responses, if we have a question that's, strongly disagree, disagree, neutral, agree, and strongly agree, we'll usually see our answers collecting on the strongly agree or strongly disagree side. Or in other cases, if we're looking at data, you'll see a bell curve for most things. But when we are generating test responses, it's completely random. And so I should expect to see, I'm doing 50, which is a decent sized N, but I should expect to see on those strongly disagree to strongly agree, where there's 5, I should expect to see 20% for each, because it's totally random. There's no bias whatsoever. Another thing to keep in mind is when we do generate test responses, we have this type of question that is an open text question. When we generate test responses, it will just populate with Latin gibberish. And so you'll see that in data and analysis when I open that up. I'm starting to wonder if eventually we'll get to the point where AI can actually read the question and generate decent prompts for it. But I kind of have a way that I did that the back way. So I popped over to the data and analysis tab over here. And we'll let this load real quick, but you can see this is just kind of like a Google Sheet or an Excel sheet. This is where all my raw data live. So again, under data analysis and the data tab, and I can scroll through and see all these answers. There's actually 2 pages because I generated 50 responses right before this one. So you'll see here's that Latin gibberish, and then it randomly picked some of these colors, green, blue, pink. If it selected blue, you'll see that it answered this follow-up question. So we just have these random answers right here. So I can determine which columns I can see right here. You can do it, one, by clicking this blue plus button. So I can select things like the survey metadata. Maybe I want to look at the start time that they took it. So these are all going to say 2:04 p.m. This is Mountain Time. Sorry, I should switch this account to Central. But you'll see that all these responses have the same start time. So I can look at really any of the 3 types of data that we talked about last time. Our survey metadata, context fields. This is going to be metadata as well because it's data that's kind of tied to the answer coming in from a contact field if we emailed it out to them. For example, if we had an email distribution list, we would have their email, their first name and their last name, and then any other pieces of embedded data that you choose to include, we can bring in from that contact field. So we have those 2. And then we have embedded data. If you remember, we talked a little bit, I gave that building example where we have building A, building B, building C. They're all coming into the same survey, but depending on which QR code they scanned, they came into the survey with a piece of embedded data tagged to them already, so A, B, or C. So that's going to be on there. And then I added, we talked about this one, green and agreeable. If they selected green and said that they strongly agree to everything, then we would tag them here. So if I open this one, let's see if of our 50, if any of those actually met the criteria. That might have been too random because they had to select 4 things exactly as we needed them. So I don't know if we're going to hit that criteria. Yep, too much randomness there. So nobody selected green and strongly agreed to everything. But then I can go down here and I can add any of these questions that this is all of my question data that we added in the survey. So that is data and analysis. So a couple of things that you can do with that. I can choose my columns over here. This is just an easier way if you don't want to hit these blue plus buttons. You can just quickly select them here with the column chooser. I can also export my data. I can export it as a CSV, TSV, and an Excel sheet. There's lots of options here. So, check out these options. There's a lot of things I can do with the data. I can also import responses. So if you are using SurveyMonkey or Google Forms or a different survey platform, and you have an ongoing survey that you want to move over to Qualtrics, you can definitely import that data. What I suggest doing there is building your survey first, generating at least one test response so that you have all of these fields populated, and then export that single response, and that will give you like an Excel template that you can work off of. And then you'll pull open your SurveyMonkey results and you'll just paste all those results in the appropriate fields. And then your template's already there because you exported it from Qualtrics, so putting it back into Qualtrics is going to be super easy. So you'll just hit that import data button and then choose your file that you've built, and then you can add all those responses, and then you can keep all of your historical data. If you do need help with that, I won't dive too much more into it, but if you do need help with that, just let us know. That's something Brooke and I do all the time, is just moving over historical data. We definitely want you to be able to analyze your data in Qualtrics. If you have that historical data, you shouldn't have to lose it. Let's see, we can set up export and import automations. So for example, if you want all of your data to be exported weekly to Tableau or something like that, you can set up those automations. And again, if you need help with that, we're happy to dive in. Over here on the left, you'll see filters, where I can just, based on any piece of these, any pieces of data that I've collected, I can filter them in. So let's do, what is your favorite color? Is blue. So now it's going to filter down. Of my 100 responses, 27 selected blue as their favorite color. So just a way that we can filter it out. I'll remove that filter now. We can also do more advanced filters. So if you click this create filter button, then I can do things like all of the following are true, or any of the following are true. If you know and or logic, all is kind of like and logic, any is kind of like or logic. And then you can save that filter. And then if it's a common filter that you're using, you can save it. It'll appear up here in this bar, so that you can quickly click on it and filter out your data if that's something that, again, you're doing frequently. Okay, so I have 100 responses in here. The next thing I wanted to talk about is our Text IQ. Text IQ is the second tab right here. Text IQ is a way of analyzing your qualitative data. So it's really easy to analyze things like how many people selected blue or how many people selected green, and throw it into a results or a report like we're going to do over here. Analyzing text data is a little bit different. I have a hard time demoing Text IQ with Latin gibberish. So I actually went ahead and I asked Gemini, Google Gemini, to answer this question, why is blank your favorite color? So it gave me 50 answers, and it's not going to be these top 50 answers. It's going to be these next 50 answers. And then I uploaded those answers using the import function that we just talked about. Whoops, covering it up. My import function. I uploaded all those answers, but I put them in their own field called TextIQ. Instead of overwriting the Latin, I just put them here. So these are all generated from AI, but it was done outside of the platform, just so we could take a look at TextIQ. So we're going to take a look at that now. I'm going to go to this tab right here. TextIQ, I want to kind of outline what it is. It is not AI. This is something that Qualtrics has had for several years now. So before the AI boom, we had TextIQ. It is a form of machine learning. So what we do is we can, based on certain words that they're saying, we can identify three major things. The first is their sentiment. So are they being positive? Are they being negative? And it'll assign a sentiment on a scale from -2 to +2. -2 being very negative, 0 being neutral, and +2 being very positive. It will also assign them if it's kind of mixed. If I were to say something like, I hate that green is not compatible with accessibility, but I do love the green grass. If I'm saying 2, then it'll mark it as mixed. So that's sentiment for TextIQ. It's also going to identify topics. But again, since it's not AI, we have to kind of teach it what topics to look for. So we'll talk about that. And then the last thing is actionability. So it's going to look at the comment to see if it falls into one of 4 categories. The first is it's actionable. This is a suggestion that I can actually use. Not actionable, meaning, I can't really do anything with this. They're just complaining, but there's nothing that I can actually do to make the sentence or improve their sentiment. And then we have other, if it's just kind of gibberish. And then I can't remember what the 4th one is right now, but when we get into it, I'll tell you. So here's all of our topics. I mentioned that we can upload topics. So if I hit this edit button right here, I can import new topics. I just chose, our question is, why is blank your favorite color? And so I was looking at some of our categories that we have. If you click this button, we do have a library of topics, from airlines to utilities. These are all of our topics. We do have one for government, so I use this one quite a bit. Enterprise technology is another one that we use quite a bit. I had never really looked at products or things like that, so I thought, well, why don't I try out retail? So I did retail. I think I did fashion and apparel, since the question's what's your favorite color? And so that's telling our TextIQ what's your favorite color has something to do with fashion and apparel. So when I selected these topics, you can see how these topics are created. Oops. Sorry. Let's see. Let me show you how these topics are created. Let me add one in real quick. So I'll add one in. Let's say we want to add grocery stores in there. I don't want all of these topics. Maybe I just want products. So I'm gonna uncheck all of these ones. Import just products. And let's see. Our product should be down here, right here. Here's our new topic. And it hasn't found any topics yet. I just need to review and publish it. And now here's the topics that I'm adding. So health and beauty, seasonal selection, clothes, household items, and products. Again, I don't know how well these will fit with our question, since we're just asking why is something your favorite color. But all of these topics have these are called queries that people have written. So again, it's not AI. We've actually gone through and we've pulled out words that have to do with health and beauty, and we've pulled out words that have to do with seasonal selection. Here's a little bit more of a complex one where we have different syntax that tells us, as long as these two words are somewhat close together, or as long as, goods right here, the quotes mean that it's exactly goods. And so there's a lot of things, a lot of syntax that go along with it. And so that's why I recommend, rather than trying to write your own topics, because there is a lot of syntax, if you can find something that's in the Qualtrics library, or if somebody has published a Qualtrics TextIQ JSON file, you can upload that. Just take a look at the topics that they're presenting and see if they fit. Luckily for us, we are in government, and so that this government option is pretty good. I'll show you some of the topics that they provide. Level of service, governance, types of service, e-government. This one's actually really helpful. Web design, web activity. Overall satisfaction when it comes to government. In-person interactions, and then government terms and communication. So these are all great topics. So lucky for us, we don't have to go searching the internet for other TextIQ topics. We can use this government field. So once you add those, you'll hit review and publish. And then we can go back to our TextIQ dashboard. So that's topics. It's going to, again, our topics don't have a ton to do with store experience, but here is how it divided it. I have store experience, overall satisfaction, services, perceived quality, and employee. The size of these bubbles tells me how many topics or how many comments there were. So this one had 8 comments. This one had 7 comments. I can see this one had 2 comments. If I click on one of these bubbles, it's going to give me subtopics for that. So now I have this subtopic here. We'll go back. Oops, I didn't mean to go all the way back. Yep, so here's all of our topics, and it'll break down and say the sentiment. So now we're getting into our next topic, which is sentiment. Down here, here my legend for this is the diamond is neutral. These chevrons facing down are very negative, and these chevrons facing up are very positive. So if we go through here, we can see how well it did. So this one, for example, says, I hate it, but my partner insisted. So here we are. ChatGPT came up with that, or Gemini came up with that. So I picked it because I know you despise it. So that's another negative one. Every time I see it, I get a little thrill. This one was tagged as positive. It's just so vibrant and full of life. Love it. Tagged as positive. This one, everyone else seems to hate it, and I like being different. This one probably could be a little more positive, so I probably saw the word hate and tagged it as negative. So I would say that as far as sentiment goes, it's pretty common that out of 50, 48 are correct. So they might not be perfect here. If it's really bugging you and you need to fix them, you can click this edit button, and you can actually edit the sentiment of some of these, and it'll actually train the machine learning to look at maybe this one. Where was it? This one, for example, anyone who doesn't like this color has terrible taste. That's actually positive, but you can kind of see why it might have marked this as negative, because it says doesn't like, and it said terrible taste. And so our machine learning probably thought it was negative. It has a hard time picking up sarcasm sometimes. And I always say, well, so do our engineers. They have a hard time picking up sarcasm too. So maybe that's why it's kind of baked into the platform. But we can edit these if we want to, and it trains it. I don't actually suggest doing it because, like I said, 47 or 48 out of 50 are going to be correct. And if you're using TextIQ, the purpose of TextIQ is to filter through thousands of responses. If you have a survey and you only have 50 responses, TextIQ probably isn't your best tool. It's more of a bulk mass type tool. If I only have 50 responses, I'll probably just go through and read each one by myself. So again, we're doing this so we can kind of quantify a qualitative piece of data. And then that'll give me an idea of, across the board, how positive is this. We use this quite a bit with the employee experience survey that goes out for the whole state, because we get about 20,000 responses for that. And so with 20,000 responses, it's hard to read everything. And they don't plan on reading everything. They just want to see what the sentiment is, based on different topics. And so that has been a very helpful tool because it is so many responses that they have to sift through. So that is let's go back to our summary here. We can also do things like build a word cloud. Some people love them. Some people hate word clouds. And then the last thing is actionability. And I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to go back to the data table right here. When we've analyzed TextIQ, I'm going to add another field right here. It will create various new embedded data fields. One is actionability. Effort is, how much effort they put into their response. I don't really use this one a ton. Emotion helps us determine their sentiment. But we have their sentiment score right here. So if I click on this one, so we can see it in a table, and we need to look at our first 50. So the sentiment score, I told you it's from -2 to +2. So this -2 is a -1. I know you despise it. This gets marked as -2. So just a way to, again, quantify it. And then I can average this out. I can take the average of all 50 responses, or hopefully you're doing like 10 or 20,000 responses. I can average it out and say, okay, overall, people are feeling, the average was 0.2. So people are feeling slightly positive about this, and that's a good thing, right? Another thing to keep in mind with TextIQ is it does take into account the question that you're asking. So for example, if I ask the question, what is something we can improve? And that's a great question for TextIQ. We recommend using very broad questions. When you get very specific, like why is this your favorite color is a very specific one, then it's hard to really identify topics. It does the sentiment pretty well, but identifying topics when you're that specific is difficult. So if you are very broad, that's helpful. But if I ask the question, what can I improve? And the response is nothing. If you're saying that I can't improve anything, that's actually positive for me, because I'm doing everything great. But if I ask the question, what am I doing well? And your same answer is nothing. So in both cases, your answer is nothing. And I say, what am I doing well? And you say nothing. That should be marked as negative. And so TextIQ actually does take into account the question that you're asking. And so you'll see that if I compare those side by side, if I compare two questions side by side. And so typically when we do say, what can I improve? People are going to give you feedback, right? If they fill out the question. And so your responses are typically going to tend towards the negative. And so sometimes people ask that question and they see that on average, they got a -1 and they're all upset because people feel negative about their product or their brand. That's not the case. That's just how they phrase the question. Where on the other hand, they'll ask, what's something we do great? So you can kind of see the bias in the questions. If I say, what's something we do great? You're pulling out those positive answers. And so people will tend to answer more positively on those ones. So as you're analyzing the data, we just say, keep in mind the question that you're asking. A negative doesn't always mean negative. It's just the way you phrase the question. And a positive doesn't always mean that you're doing great. It's just the way you phrase the question. And so keep that in mind as you're doing TextIQ. The last one I wanted to show was actionability. I do like this one. A lot of these are going to be tagged as other because they don't have much to do with anything. There's not a suggestion or something right here. But here's one, not a meaningful message. Why not? What a silly question to ask. So this isn't really going to help me right, as my data. So I can actually filter these things out if I want to filter out things that aren't meaningful. Most of them are other though. I think that was our only one that was tagged as not meaningful. So that's what actionability is. So we talked about sentiment, actionability, and topics. Those are three things that TextIQ does well. Again, it did require a little bit of setup. I had to go over here to TextIQ. I had to import my topics. For sentiment, there's not much you have to do. As long as it's in TextIQ, you can get that sentiment going. But as far as topics go, you do have to get those imported. So just a quick way to analyze your free text here. Okay, so let's move on to Stats IQ. This one I'm not going to spend a ton of time on. Stats IQ is a lot of fun for statisticians out there. I don't think my data set is a great example to use for Text IQ. But as it's preparing the data set, I'll just explain what you can do. It'll list all of my different variables, all of the different pieces of data that I collected in my survey, whether it's question, embedded, or metadata. And I can click on those variables and hit describe. It will tell me about that variable. It will tell me, if I clicked on question 2, which is what is your favorite color, it'll build a bar chart for me and kind of describe what that looks like in my survey. But then the big ones are relate and regression. If I select two variables and run a regression, I can see it will run the appropriate test, whether it's and this is where I'm not a statistician, but whether it's a t-test, whether it's a chi-squared test, it'll run the appropriate test based on the type of variable. And it will tell you if there's a statistical, if there's, if it's statistically significant or not. And it'll put it in plain words. And so this does take a little while. It does not take 60 minutes. I know it says 60 minutes, but it shouldn't take that long. But it's too much. I would recommend going to our help pages. Stats IQ isn't a hugely or a widely used feature, but if you do find that it will be helpful for your data, I think it's a great way to look at data, running regressions, and so you're not just deciding if the data is statistically significant, but you're actually proving that it's statistically significant or not. Okay, so we talked about these three columns. Crosstabs IQ, this is just another form of Stats IQ, so we won't talk about it either. But these are our three main columns for looking at our data: our raw data, our qualitative data, and our quantitative data, just ways to analyze those. The biggest one we'll talk about is probably our results and our reports. So I'm going to hop over to those right now. When I click on the results tab right here, again, what's really helpful is the fact that I did go generate those answers there. And so I do have some data to work with. But essentially what it's going to do for every piece of data that I've collected, it's going to create what's called a widget. These white boxes here are called widgets. If you remember, I added that reCAPTCHA and then I took it out. And so if it creates a widget that you don't need, just click on these three dots and you can just remove that widget. So I'm going to take that one out. That one's not needed. Again, it's doing its best to visualize the data based on the type of question that you asked. And so if we do get a multiple choice question, it's going to create a bar chart because it just assumes, okay, for multiple choice, bar chart is a great way to visualize that data. And then it can also give you different counts. And so it'll create this widget as well. And so I might say, okay, this one, this wasn't really a ranking question. So this type of average, minimum, maximum, standard deviation, this is not helpful for me. So I'm just going to take that one out. You can click this edit button and hit remove. But maybe I'll say, okay, these two widgets are helpful. I can resize them if I want. So I'm going to move that one down, move this one down. I can say, okay, these two were helpful, so I want to leave those two. And then I can go in here if I want, hit this edit button, and I can do things like, if you go to the display, you can change the colors. So if I want to change this to Iowa teal, I can make that a nice Iowa teal so I can customize what my dashboard or my results board looks like. Um, and I can go in and I can add filters and things like that. This is, if you've used Tableau, this is very similar in how you build a dashboard by adding metrics, y-axis, and things like that. I can also change this widget if I don't want it to be horizontal bars. I want it to be vertical bars. It's going to require me to reconfigure it a little bit. Actually, it did a pretty good job, but now we have vertical bars. We have other things like a pie chart. Some people love pie charts. I'm not a big fan, but there's a pie chart if you want it. And then here's our this one is actually, I'm going to go hit edit. This one is a table widget right here. And so it's just gone through and it's added a percent and a total count. We have 100, so our percents actually match our total count here. So that's two widgets. Here's another one. We have that do you like light blue or dark blue question. Again, I didn't build these. Qualtrics just builds them based on what the question is asking. So maybe this one is not that helpful, so we'll probably take it out. It gives me a list of all of our free text responses. This is all Latin, so I probably don't want that one either. So we'll just take that one out. Here is our question. That was the matrix question where we said red is a powerful color, blue is a submissive color, yellow is a happy color. And if I hover over this, it says, okay, my pink is strongly disagree. This is somewhat disagree, neither agree nor disagree, somewhat agree, strongly agree. I like it when the colors tell a story. So I like to have kind of red as my disagree color and green as my agree color. I don't know if that's just me, but so I might go edit this and change the colors a little bit. Or I can, let's see, there's another cool thing that I like to do on this one. If you go to display, let's see if it'll actually work. I'm doing this on the fly. Turn on this stacked chart. I think that's just a cleaner view. It'll show you the responses if I hover over it. So again, just take what you like about this results board and remove the things that you don't like. Let's see. I noticed on here that it does not include that extra field that I added. And so if I want to add a widget, I can just scroll to the bottom. I'm going to go into edit mode up here. I'm going to take this one out. I'm going to add a widget here, and I'm going to do what's called a response ticker. This just lists all of the free text entries that I got. And so it'll ask you for content. So I'm going to hit add here. And I'm going to click on this text IQ. This is the field that I imported from Gemini. Okay, so we have that. And then it says, do you want to add a subtitle or things like that? One that I like to add as a subtitle might be, for the employee experience survey, one thing that we do add is like the agency. So I can see their comment and then I can see what agency they're from right here. That's a helpful thing to add. So I can add just like a subtitle. And then we can also add a ticker value. So in this case, it's going to pull in all of my numeric responses. And so the one that I like to do is sentiment score right here. So here's that ticker where 0 is going to be neutral, 2 is going to be positive. Again, this is a numeric value, so it could be really any number, and so our colors don't make a ton of sense. And so with your widgets, as you're building them out, again, you want to tell a story with your widgets. And so these colors don't make a ton of sense to me. I'm going to go over to the display. I'll click this ticker countdown, and I can change this threshold. So my upper threshold, my top one should be 2. Oops. My middle one should be probably -1, or actually for text IQ, I like to do 0.5. So that means all of my zeros will be yellow or orange. My top one's going to be 2. Actually, I think this is supposed to be positive 0.5. And this one's supposed to be negative. Oh, let's see. Maybe I was right the first time. I think I was right the first time. Okay, so I see my 0 is orange. That's what I want. My 2 is green. That's what I want. My -2 is red. That's what I want. So yeah, this looks pretty good to me. Maybe I want my one a little bit higher. So you can adjust these numbers. I'm not good enough at math to figure it out right now, but you can adjust these numbers so that the colors tell a story. We also have hex codes on these, and so you can add exactly the color that you want to match your branding. But I can add filters. There's just a lot you can do here. So again, hop into the help pages, determine as you're collecting the data and as you're asking the questions, kind of start to ask yourself, okay, how do I want to visualize this? And then build the appropriate widget for it. Again, this page one was created by Qualtrics just based on your answers. But if you're kind of like, I just want a clean slate, you can add a blank page right here. And this is just kind of an open sandbox right here. So I can add a widget. I can start creating my own. Let's say I want a number chart. This one's pretty straightforward. I can add what type of number I want. Let's say I add a count. I don't have any filters, so it's looking at all of my responses and it's spitting out 100. That's a widget, just a quick widget we can make. I can add another widget that is just the rich content editor. We talked about the rich content editor yesterday, and I can say my dashboard. We'll make it nice and big. We'll center it. And then I can throw this at the top. This is technically a widget. It doesn't have any data in it, but it's a widget. And then maybe I'll put the state flag right there, make it look pretty. So you can add all of those widgets and really tell a story with your data using the results tab. I'll mention here that this result tab is tied to a single survey. You may have a use case where perhaps you have multiple surveys and you need to have all of those surveys plug in to your results. We do have that functionality. We just need you to reach out to us, and as you're submitting your survey request, just let us know that you want to use what are called dashboards. So results, think of results as tied to just a single survey, and dashboards, I can plug in multiple surveys and I can plug in external data that's coming in. I can plug in all sorts of different data sources, kind of like a Tableau, but it's done on, it's using a different feature. So just reach out to us if results aren't cutting it for you and you need a little bit more firepower. If you need more widget abilities, we can definitely do that. But results is an easy way for you to just get started without having to wait for a certain permission. Lastly is reports. This was like, this kind of throws me back a little bit. This is kind of the old school way of reporting on your data. We don't use it a ton anymore because the whole idea is that it can be printed out and people just don't print things anymore. So if you do need to create some sort of visualization that goes on a printable report, you can do it over here. It's kind of the same idea. I can add this visualization for what is your favorite color. I just don't have as much customizability here. To be honest, I hardly ever use the reports tab over here, but it is something that you have. Again, it has a lot of functionality. I can change my colors here and make my report look pretty. But again, we tend to use this results tab. It's just a little bit more user-friendly, easier to navigate. Another nice thing about the results is my ability to export some of these. So I can hit export on a single widget. If I have a really good widget that I like that I want to put in a PowerPoint or something like that, I can export. Here's my export options, JPEG, PDF, CSV, TSV, Excel. I tend to like the JPEG option if you are going to put it in a PowerPoint. That way it's just like a single image that you can resize. So that's helpful to have. Or if it's more of a table widget like this one, I might want to export that one as a CSV. That would be helpful. or I can export my entire dashboard. I can download this entire dashboard, or I can email the dashboard to somebody. It'll essentially email a PDF report of the dashboard. I can include a link to the dashboard as well. So if I'm emailing this internally to somebody who has access to it, I can email it to them and just say, hey, here's a link to my dashboard. You should have access to it. For results, the way you get access to it, we talked about this last time, but if you could just go over to the survey tab over here, click the tools drop down, and you can collaborate this project. And so that's going to be, if I add Jessica to this one, I can send her a little invite note if I need to. I can give her permission if I don't want her to actually be able to edit the survey. I just want her to be able to view my reports. Then I can turn off these, or I can turn off, a subsection of these. Like, hey, I don't want you actually touching my survey, but I do want you to be able to view my reports. So here's all the reports. I can give her kind of maybe I don't want her to see cross tabs or the survey results. I just want her to view our text analysis or something like that. And maybe I don't want her to activate or close it, so I can turn these off as well. So I can determine what they can see and what they can't see. Again, if you need some more firepower behind this, we do have dashboards where you can create more role-based access. So if you are creating a dashboard and you have hundreds of people that need to see it, just reach out to us, say, hey, results aren't going to cut it for this survey. I need something with a little more longevity, something where I can do role-based access. So based on, what city they're in, they should only be seeing a certain amount of data. A good example of this, again, is the driver's license offices or the DMVs. We'll use these dashboards where we're collecting feedback data all across the state. But if I only want my Des Moines DMV managers to be able to see data from Des Moines, then I can give them role-based access and say, okay, the city needs to equal the dashboard viewers city that they're in, and it will automatically filter the data for you. So again, the whole point of this training is to show you the art of the possible. So if you have questions on how to do that, feel free to reach out. I'm not going to share that with Jessica. So we talked about data and analysis. We talked about results, which is kind of our mini dashboard. And we talked about reports, which are somewhat deprecated at this time. We also talked about looking at our raw data. Again, if you are a big R user, or maybe you want to throw this right into Tableau, you can do that from here. We recommend trying to build your dashboard or your results tab in Qualtrics because it keeps all your data in one place, but those options are all available to you. Okay, I believe that's everything I wanted to cover for data reporting and data and analysis. So at this time, Jessica, I'll let you, if you have anything you want to add, please add it. And if not, we'll dive into question and answer.
I'm back on. I don't know what happened with my computer. It was insane. So I don't know what I sent. I apologize. It's not right. It was crazy. But thank you for your patience on that. I just wanted to kind of quickly go over the different roles. So when you enroll into Okta, you click on your tile. By default, you are a standard user. And so that gives you pretty much everything that you have seen today. Since Monday through today, that gives you all access to those things. So there's no really limitation of being a standard user. The only upgrade that you may want, as Hunter's been saying, if you want to access to the dashboard, the CX dashboard, which we haven't shown you, that is an elevated permission to an advanced user. Keyword advanced user. That might require some additional training down the road, more hand holding, or some walking beside you to help you and get it set up correctly. So I know there's some data people on this call that would probably be really interested in that. I just ask that you kind of play with reports first, but we can definitely, if I know you have a background of Tableau or other Looker Studio or Power BI, those are all similar tools with that. Another question I know will be asked down the road, so I might as well address it now. These dashboards are not set to go anyone with a link access. So like a lot of you maybe want to make visualizations for the website. That is not something that can be done very easily. However, there are exceptions to every rule. I do want to ask Hunter for some clarification if he might not have the answer. Is it just the CX dashboards that can do anyone with the link access with permissions, or is it just the results in the survey can't, correct?
Yeah, neither of them can unless you go through the public dashboard access. For both of them, you're going to have to determine who should have access by adding them to a role. If you do need to add a widget to a website or something like that, you can export it like I showed you, export a PDF of it. People do that a lot because it is static data though, it's not live. And so if it's an ongoing survey and that type of result you want to publish, then that would need more of a public dashboard type thing, which again will have to go through us. And I don't want to put that on Jessica. That's actually not an Iowa thing. That's a Qualtrics thing where any public dashboards have a different process where our that goes through our engineers to make sure that you're not accidentally publicizing any sort of protected data that you're not supposed to. So, but you can still export those static widgets. Obviously, it's like taking a screenshot and posting that on the website.
So, and also that's kind of our mentality, right? We're trying to keep our data in good stewardship. And so it's kind of like, these are great for internal executive leadership reports or in so much more. I just know that some of us might be thinking down the road, but we also have our own internal data.iowa.gov that we do all those visualizations inside there. So just wanted to kind of clarify that. So I know that'll be a question.